don't stand in the way. Fair tax is coming across the USA. Fair tax is coming to clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax
FAIRtax
Guys, dedicated to the proposition that the IRS is a criminal enterprise that needs to be purged from our lives and thrown on the scrap heap of history with a stake driven through its heart. How do you like that?
And we're going to emphasize that point in today's program.
Oh, yes. We're going to continue something that we started last time here on FAIRtax Power Radio. If you've not heard the previous episode, you might want to back up and listen to that one before you get to this one, because this is going to be continuing. You have got a whole pile of stuff you call, ripped from the headlines.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, we are documenting why the IRS needs to go away, why the income tax is a bad idea, because with the income tax comes the IRS. There's no way to separate the two of them. And it is it'll curl your hair what some of these people have to go through. But first, let's encourage people to get a hold of us. The FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com is our email address. And we certainly would like to direct you to our Facebook page.
Yep.
On Facebook, The FAIRtax Guys. And also remind you that we do a Facebook Live every month.
Yep.
And catch that up and write comments about that as well. We'll talk to you right on the air about those.
Yeah, and if you weren't able to tune in, because our last one was the evening of the 17th, the day before taxes were due, but that video stays on our Facebook page, so you can take a look, because you definitely want to see the FAIRtax Czar in action.
Okay, that's not really our Facebook page. This is done on the FAIRtax page, the national page.
Yeah, but I put it on ours.
You put it on ours as well?
Yep.
Okay, good deal.
I shared it onto ours.
I'm glad to see that. Okay.
So, 'tis there.
Let's go ahead with our ripped from the headlines things. Some of the, and I'm going to call them what they are, atrocities that the IRS commits against American people.
Yeah, this group, I've categorized as IRS scandal and corruption. All right, and some of these, you shouldn't be driving while you're listening to this particular episode, folks, because I can't be responsible for what may happen. This is from the American Spectator of February 21st of this year. Now, this first comment, I'm not going to take credit for this. In the bubble of Washington, Poles strain at the gnat and swallow the camel. Not a phrase that I'm familiar with.
Yeah,
right?
I think I kind of know where that comes from. That describes politicians perfectly.
They chase after media-driven pseudo-scandals while letting the real scandal linger. Take the scandal of the IRS's harassment of non-profit groups during the Obama administration. Getting to the bottom of that scandal is far more important than any of the election-related wild goose chases under the discussion in the press. Americans don't toss and turn at night over fears of a hazy network of Russian hackers, but they do fear letters from the IRS. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, they do. Okay.
Because I have never gotten one that said, "Oh, you paid too much, here's a refund check."
No, I haven't.
It's always
seen
the other
one.
way. You didn't pay enough. You owe us money. And we got the power to come get it from you.
To their credit, a few conservative Republicans in the House still draw attention to the unresolved scandal. Frankly, in my view, the most corrupt IRS commissioner that I've ever dealt with continues, in my view, to mislead Congress. And that is according to Kevin Brady, the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. Holy cow, when the chair of the Ways and Means Committee is disparaging your efforts, I think you ought to get your resume in order, don't you think, Bob?
Yeah, and let me make this point again. Those of you who dislike the Tea Party and want to see the Tea Party smashed in every way possible just because you don't like what they stand for, understand that because the IRS is going after them today, they will be coming after you eventually. Because this has been used against both sides. It will continue to be used against both sides. And regardless of whether you like the Tea Party or don't, you really should be turned off by the idea of the IRS coming after them simply because the party in power does not like their political ideology. Because that shoe gets flipped over to the other foot fairly often.
That's right. And I've got a stack of stuff here about the IRS and certain scandals. And I believe you're going to agree with us that the IRS really needs to go away. All right, this is another one. This is from Town Hall, dated March 10th of this year. Conservatives confused why Koskinen still has his job. Of course, John Koskinen is the commissioner of the IRS. Current IRS Commissioner John Koskinen was not leading the agency when it was targeting conservative groups that opposed President Obama's policy, but he was pretty uncooperative during Congress's investigation into the scandal during his own tenure. For that reason, Republicans are wondering why President Trump has not relieved him of his duties. He did let the head of the DOJ go, all right, the Department of Justice, and even the one that filled in temporarily, who said she was going to obstruct Trump's ideas. He let her go, too.
Yeah, and I read the headlines the next day. Trump to DOJ official, you're fired.
Yeah, you're fired. And so they're wondering, why is Koskinen still there? President Trump should fire Commissioner Koskinen and replace him with somebody that will bring integrity and competence to the IRS, said Representative Bob Goodlatte of Virginia. 54 of Goodlatte's colleagues also penned a letter to the White House encouraging the administration to remove Koskinen. Calls for Koskinen's removal may have reached a fevered pitch this week. Of course, that was last month, because of newly surfaced documents relating to the IRS. 7,000 new documents are not yet publicly available. Okay,
yeah, now the whole idea here is that the IRS, just the nature of the beast, he's got so much power. Politicians can use it as a weapon. That should not be. It needs to go away. And the only way to get rid of it is to get rid of the income tax that the IRS is charged with administering and enforcing. Anything that keeps the income tax, keeps the IRS, you can tinker around the edges with it. You can actually do what Paul Ryan is calling, major tax reform. But I like Kerry Bauer's thing. He's going from a personal and corporate income tax and payroll tax system administered and enforced by the IRS to a personal and corporate income tax system and payroll taxes administered and enforced by the IRS and calling it tax reform.
Yeah, big change, huh?
Big shout out to Kerry Bauer's for that one. But the agency needs to go away, and the only way to get rid of it. There are politicians that will tell you that you can. We'll fix this so we can do your taxes on a postcard, and we really won't need the IRS. If you've got the income tax, you've got the IRS. The only way to get rid of the IRS is to get rid of the income tax, and the only way to do that is to pass the fair tax.
Yep. All right. Continuing here with the news. Now, that last article said something about 7,000 documents that are not yet publicly. Okay, this one is from Free Beacon. March 8th of this year. 2 years later, IRS locates 6,924 documents related to Tea Party targeting. All right, the Internal Revenue Service has located 6,924 documents potentially related to the targeting of Tea Party conservatives 2 years after the group Judicial Watch filed a Freedom of Information lawsuit for them. Now, that's not the best of it. The agency will not say when it will make the documents available to the public. At this time, the service is unable to provide an estimate regarding when it will complete its review of potentially responsive documents.
We found them, but we're not going to show them to you.
Can anybody say stonewalling?
Oh, can anybody say faceless bureaucrat that ought to be fired?
Ay, ay, ay. So they've got these documents that are probably what people are looking for, the Judicial Watch, but the IRS is still stonewalling, still blocking their efforts to, bring people to justice. All right, and it gets better and better. I got a couple more articles that are just going to curl your hair.
Oh, go for it.
Okay. Okay, and this is actually from the Convention of the States website. Dated April 3rd. If the swamp is being drained, why is IRS Commissioner still around? Why is John Koskinen, the scandal-plagued IRS Commissioner, still in office? Inquiring minds want to know. He's the number one candidate in Washington for President Trump's signature line, "You're fired." but it hasn't happened yet. Koskinen was brought into the IRS in 2013 and was supposed to uncover why Tea Party and conservative groups were singled out and denied approvals for tax-exempt status, but he didn't. Instead, what Congress and the public got from him was obstruction, open defiance, and a refusal to discipline anyone at the agency. Nobody at the agency has ever been disciplined for blocking the Tea Party applications for tax-exempt status. Nobody's ever been disciplined. And one last thing here. As an award for being such a good puppet, the Department of Justice never dared to bring any charges, and that helped ensure Lois Lerner walked free, protected anyone from bearing any responsibility against the targeting of the conservative groups. These are unconstitutional abuses by the federal government. Somebody needs to be held liable.
Somebody needs to get rid of the entire agency.
Yeah. This last one is, I have to admit, I get really upset when I read this one. This
Here,
one is.
Let me give you a hanky here.
Yeah. It is helping to dry up my sinuses, though. Anyways, this is from Forbes.com, dated April 5th of this year. The Bank Secrecy Act requires financial institutions to report currency transactions in excess of $10,000 to the IRS. This law also makes it a crime to structure currency transactions to avoid these reports. Now, Bob and I have talked about this
We have
before.
talked about this before, that civil asset forfeiture.
Exactly. And we use the example of Carol Hinders. To take a look after this episode, go to YouTube and do a search for Carol Hinders. She's an older person who runs a cash-only restaurant, and see what happened to her. Anyways, yet in a new report says that the law is enforced primarily against individuals and businesses whose income was legally obtained. Okay? How much? 91% of the IRS seizures for structuring involve lawful taxpayers. So they were given this law to try to catch up with criminals.
Yeah, the idea is you catch drug dealers and criminals who deal in cash and would be depositing large amounts of cash in their bank accounts. And of course, I don't like the idea that the government's watching how much I put in my bank, but that's a whole another story. But the idea behind this authority was noble, to catch these kind of folks that deal in these illegal cash-based businesses. But instead of catching the folks that they were supposed to be going after, 91%, you say, they're going after people that are not criminals.
Oh, and it gets better, Bob.
And they're trying to make criminals out of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're just harassing these absolutely innocent people, individuals and business people just trying to conduct their business. Okay, there have long been complaints about IRS seizures of property without sufficient evidence of a crime. The Tax Inspector General for Treasury Inspector General for the Tax Administration, TIGTA, audited to determine how many seizures and forfeitures are conducted, what procedures the IRS used, and whether those procedures were fair. The report isn't rosy. It says that 91% of the 278 investigations in the sample were the source of funds that could be, where the source of funds could be determined, the funds were obtained legally. 91%.
That's your restaurant owner.
Yeah, exactly. IRS procedures dictate that the overall purpose of its civil forfeiture program is to disrupt and dismantle criminal enterprises. They're not doing a very good job of it. And here's the last part. This is the part that really rankles me. And this is from Breitbart, dated April 5th. IRS seized millions of dollars from innocent citizens because it was easier than going after crooks. Yeah.
Run that by me one more time.
Yeah, that's the title. IRS seized millions of dollars from innocent citizens because it was easier than going after crooks. Yeah. Yeah. They have a tool given to them by Congress to chase down criminals, but they don't bother going after the criminals. It's just too easy for them to go after innocent citizens.
Oh. Man, that'll make your blood boil.
A report from a Treasury Inspector General's, this is the same report, but it gets into a little bit more nitty-gritty, found that IRS misused a law aimed at cracking down on organized crime and terrorism. Agents adopted a policy of seizing cash before investigating for other wrongdoing because it was just easier to seize the money of innocent people than hardened criminals. One of the reasons why legal source cases were pursued was that the Department of Justice had encouraged task forces to engage in quick hits. So you got the IRS and the DOJ saying, don't worry about it. It's easier to get these innocent people and seize some money from them than it is to actually go after crime. This is the part that really, really gets me upset.
Oh, I can tell. You're turning red.
I just don't want to start coughing again.
Oh, I'll tell you what. But you would think that before the government, of course, the IRS being an arm of the government, before any government should be able to come in and seize your property, take your bank account, stuff like that, you would think that the person to whom they are doing that should at least be accused of some wrongdoing. Yeah. Probably it'd be better if they would have to have been proved guilty of some kind of wrongdoing. You can't just swoop in and do it because you want to.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's exactly what they're doing.
Oh, man.
And I admit...
now you're making me turn red.
Yep. I had mentioned... I learned in one of my meetings, there was one of our people at the meeting was a former bank teller, and I was talking about the civil asset forfeiture, and she says, oh, here's why. Because bank tellers are trained, if they see unusual deposits of cash, they're trained to notify the IRS and not even tell their branch managers, not tell the other tellers, just do it. So if a teller sees some money being deposited, but in the case of Carol Hinders, she's run this restaurant, at the time of this video for like 38 years. This was a common, ordinary thing. She had done that, worked with that bank for about 30 years. She worked with that bank. Unfortunately, what happened in that bank is they were recently taken over by a larger bank, and there was a management change. Yeah, and so she got nailed. Yeah, and
the thought
all kinds of innocent people.
The thought in my head here is, what kind of government turns people into snitches against each other?
Yeah, exactly. And
not the constitutional republic that the U.S. of A. was founded as.
Why can't the IRS make a phone call and say, Mrs. Hinders, you've been making all these deposits? Well, yeah, because I run a cash-only restaurant. And I have been running this restaurant for almost 40 years as cash-only. And I have to make these cash deposits. I'm not going to stuff the money under. They wouldn't even make a phone call. First, they take the money. Then they call her up and let her know. Then she's got to fight to get it back. And this happens hundreds and hundreds of times to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. Meanwhile, the crooks are getting away scot-free, at least 91% of them.
Okay, bottom line here, the whole system is corrupt. The whole system stinks. Any system that allows all that to happen needs to go away. And as we keep saying over and over and over again here on FAIRtax Power Radio, the only way to get rid of the corruption is to get rid of the IRS. And the only way to get rid of the IRS is to get rid of the income tax. The only way to get rid of the income tax is to pass the fair tax. Anything that keeps the income tax, keeps the IRS, and even though things may, stabilize for a little while, they always go back. It'll always be weaponized. And sometimes it's against the conservatives. Next time it'll be against the liberals. Next time it'll be against who knows. But you've got to get rid of the whole. That's the whole message. We've got to get rid of the whole system. And the only way to get rid of the whole system is to pass the fair tax.
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
Now let me shift gears here again before we run out of time and forget to do our little weekly foray into Congress.gov.
Yeah, we should have some music to go with that legislative update.
Well, we had this little discussion a while back. You play golf.
Yeah.
And I'm a bowler.
Yeah.
And there was a proposal one time to make golf equipment deductible as a medical expense because playing golf is good for your health.
Yeah.
So that's no fair that you golfers get a break that we bowlers don't, because slinging a 16-pound ball down a 60-foot lane takes a little bit of effort as well. But here's one that we can join hands on and both say this is nuts. This is called H.R. 1806. Sponsored by Representative Andy Barr of, as you can see, Kentucky, which doesn't surprise you when you realize what this says. This H.R. 1806 to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to allow the expensing of racehorses.
Now, there's something...
I don't know too many people who have 4 or 5 of those things hanging out in their garage, right?
You know, my homeowners association would have something to say about that.
There are a lot more golfers and a lot more bowlers than there are folks who own these racehorses. And this guy in Kentucky, again, he's standing up for his constituency, is trying to give the racehorse people a break that other people don't get.
Yeah.
Not fair, guys. You cannot do that.
Yeah, that doesn't appeal to me as something that the everyday American can take advantage of.
Of course, we're here in Central Florida. There are a lot of racehorses here in Central Florida as well, and we know how expensive those things are.
Yep. Oh, yes. And that is a big industry here, especially here in where we live in Marion County, which we like to call the horse capital of the world.
Yeah, Kentucky folks will argue with you about that.
Yeah, that's right. But it's an example of how the tax law can be modified to help a very, very few while the rest of us pay for it. Because if they get an exemption and the government collects less tax because of that, the rest of us has to make up for it.
Yeah, touch a bit on what expensing of racehorses actually means.
Well, if you had a business in which you needed to buy a truck, all right, that truck is a business expense. And I'm not in business anymore, but when my wife and I had our commercial trucks, Class 8 trucks, they were depreciated over 5 years. Sometimes some equipment could be immediately expensed all in 1 year. And that's what they're talking about. They want to, whatever they're paying for the racehorse, they want to count it as an expense for this year.
So make that deductible. Make the cost of a racehorse deductible.
And we're talking about $1 million horses, you know?
Huh.
Yeah.
And they won't give me $19.98 off a bowling ball. How fair is that?
So, it's another example of how ludicrous this whole thing gets. And here it is. This episode is airing at the end of the month. We've got probably over 500 proposals to change the tax code at this point, just in the first 4 months of the new Congress. How crazy is it going to get, by the end of the 2 years? And what Paul Ryan and his folks are doing is they want to perpetuate the monster, perpetuate this crazy income tax thing, which the lobbyists love the idea, because it's job security for them. But as long as there's an income tax, you're going to have crazy proposals like this. I mean, that's just nuts.
You cannot do that with a fair tax. You do not buy racehorses at the cash register, so that doesn't work.
How much time we got left, Bob?
Oh, about 6 minutes.
Okay, well, tax day this year was put off until April 18th. That's when your returns were due. But Tax Freedom Day, did you know Tax Freedom Day was April 23rd? Now, what is Tax Freedom Day? I'm looking at a printout from the Tax Foundation website. And this is this month. All right. Key findings. This year, Tax Freedom Day falls on April 23rd, 113 days into the year. That means, all right, well, let me read what they say, because they say it better than I can. Tax Freedom Day is a significant date for taxpayers and lawmakers because it represents how long Americans work as a whole have to work in order to pay the nation's tax burden. Americans will pay $3.5 trillion in federal taxes and $1.6 trillion in state and local taxes for a total tax bill of $5.1 trillion, or 31% of the nation's income. So you have to work 113 days for the various governments. Then the rest of it you can use for your family.
So the government takes every dime you make for the first 4 months.
Yeah.
If they're looking at it that way. That's how long it takes to earn the amount of money that you're going to end up paying over the course of the year.
Yeah.
That is astounding.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's Tax Freedom Day. I thought of this after our Facebook Live thing. So
I like Tax Freedom Day being January 1st, which we could have with the fair tax.
There you go. Yep, that would be good. That would be real good.
Oh, man. I tell you what. Well, I say time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And let me again encourage people to communicate with us, the FAIRtax Guys, here at thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. Leave us a comment on our Facebook page as well. Check out our Facebook Live events. And, of course, we've been hammering on PopVox. What are some other good places we need to talk about as well? Of course, bigsolution.org and fairtax.org.
Big Solution.
Always at the top of the list. Folks need to go check those out.
Bigsolution.org is an important website of the Americans for Fair Taxation. That's where you can connect and contribute and so forth, because we really do need your help. I mean, there's no other way of getting around it. If we're going to do this, we need your money. I mean, we need your financial support. It would be great to be able to run some nice flashy ads on national TV. Wouldn't that be nice?
It
in
would.
favor of the fair tax? All right.
Because a lot of people still don't even know what it is because the media is not talking about it.
Yeah. I can tell you
the media is not talking about it. If you listen to the media, you would never even know that the fair tax existed. Because even your big national talk shows, people like Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh, who proclaim to like the fair tax, they're not talking about it. And again, Rush was on a couple of weeks ago talking about, well, it's a great idea, but it'll never happen. We need to get through and change his mind.
Yeah. One thing AFFT is they have hired a booker, somebody who is calling the various radio shows around the country. And Steve Hayes is doing, I think he's doing like an interview every single day talking about the fair tax. And Randy's getting into it too. I talked to Randy the other day.
Yeah, Randy Fisher. We've had him on the radio here before.
That's right. And he's a local boy here in Florida.
Yes, and he's on our Facebook Live events. If you leave a comment during that, he'll talk to you.
He's our expert. When you give us a question that stumps us, it doesn't stump Randy. So they are getting out there on the radio circuit. So that's good. That's good. We're gonna try to pursue that. Don't forget our monthly webinar. Now, this episode airs a couple days, or actually a day after the monthly webinar, but there'll be another one next month in May. It'll be the fourth Thursday of the month, and it's a good way to. It takes about an hour. It's always on the 8 p.m. Eastern time on the fourth Thursday of the month, and you go to fairtax.org/webinar and register. And then just before the event, you log in, and that's also interactive, just like our Facebook Live event. It's also interactive. You can type in questions. And those guys, Larry and Mark from Orlando, do a fantastic job with that webinar. So that's another way to get people introduced. And I always learn something. I've been doing this fair tax stuff a long time, but I always learn something from these guys. So it's well worth the time.
Something else folks need to check out is FairtaxRewards.com.
Oh, yeah.
That is where you can get a little bit back for yourself, a little bit back for the fair tax cause on purchases you're going to make anyway.
That's right. If you're a busy person and you order stuff online, and to pick it up at the store later on, like after work or during your lunch, well, go to FairtaxRewards.com first. Find the item at whatever store you're going to buy it. Go ahead and purchase it, but when you go to FairtaxRewards.com, you get a small stipend, and the Americans for Fair Taxation get a small stipend.
Yeah, FairtaxRewards.com is just kind of a gateway.
Yeah.
That you actually go through there, and then you actually go to Walmart, or you go to Target, or you go to whatever.
Home Depot, whatever.
Is Amazon on there? I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've looked.
No, not Amazon.
But, no,
Amazon is like their own universe.
Oh, well, I would think so. Oh, well. But anyway, you actually land on the website that you would go to directly normally. That's right. But if you get there by going to Fair Tax Rewards first,
and they run specials and
then
stuff.
you get a little bit of help there. And we appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a good one. And don't forget our FairTax logo store, fairtaxlogostore.org. We have new sunscreens for cars that say FairTax on them.
Yes,
nice,
you
shiny,
got one.
Silver things. Yeah, I got
one. Reflected in my eyes as you were pulling in.
Yeah. But it's pretty neat. Your car will be screaming FairTax while it's parked there, shielding you from the sun.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of FairTax Power Radio. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
The FairTax Guys, reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming, don't stand in the way. Fair tax is coming across the USA.